I am getting old. Speaking of getting old, who remembers this? How's your knees and back feeling? Have you taken your Advil today? All seriousness, Macromedia Flash, for those who did not know, was the best thing to ever happen to web development. I will die on that hill. I think it's great, just like I will die on the hill of one-base indexes. Macromedia Flash was great because not only could you bring in like your designer friends who knew how to make things look great, but they gave you this cool little thing up here at the top called a timeline. For those who didn't get a chance to experience Flash in all its glory, a timeline allowed you to take, say, a circle. Could just be an object, could be some text, could be anything. You could select the spot on the timeline where you want your object to, like, how long you want an animation to take. You would move your object to that timeline, move the object in space, select the timeline, and then say, create animation tween. And then when you hit play, it would just move. And you could do a lot of other things with this. Like, you could warp it into a different shape completely. Flash was really cool in that case, and we lost a lot of the good that Flash brought to the web. We're starting to get it back, though. So we're going to talk about animations on the web, how you can make them simple, how you can make them better. You can find me not on Twitter too much these days. I'm on the cooler Blue Sky site. If you're not on Blue Sky, join. It's a lot more fun and nice over there. But let's dive into animations. Animations on the web have had a very, very fun history. Quick show of hands, or not show of hands, whoever's going to shout it out first. What browser had the first animation support? Anybody? You're all wrong. It was Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer. All the joys of Internet Explorer 5.5. Now, you might be wondering, Mike, how did this happen? How did we get animations in Internet Explorer? Internet Explorer shipped with this really cool meta tag. They gave you this meta tag that because this was around the time when we were still shipping separate HTML files for all of our different routes. It was a simpler time. It was a better time. But they gave you this meta tag where you could define an enter animation and an exit animation. You'd give it the HTTP equiv, then you would set the content to be a reveal transition, whether that was 3 seconds, 500 milliseconds. And then for the transition, you would actually have all of these built-in transitions provided by the browser for animating things from left to right, right to left, doing that nice little circle grow in the middle. Really, really top-notch stuff that existed in 1999, 2000. Really cool stuff. Internet Explorer 5.5 died and we lost this animation. We wouldn't see animations again until we got keyframe animations on the web, roughly around 2007. And this was something that Safari had first. We don't hear that often, but Safari had something first, folks. With keyframe animations, you would define a start and end point, and then using CSS, you'd be able to define that animation inside of your code. Now, this was great because you could just code it and then have the animation play and take off, but the animation kind of lacked a lot of fine-grained control, right? You couldn't really catch it mid-animation. You were kind of off on your own. JavaScript animations came along after that, where they basically re-implemented a JavaScript animation engine. And probably the one that people are most familiar with is GreenSock. There's nearly a dozen animation libraries out there. jQuery Animate, anybody? The fun thing with these is that the animation would just work, but you'd have so much JavaScript to do simple things like this. If anyone's ever took a look at jQuery Animate for fun Friday night reading, their animation timeline is a set timeout. You didn't. No one like gasp at that. Yeah, thank you. Set timeout for an animation timeline is terrible, especially because this was before we had request animation frame. So code was very slow. It was great for the time, but trying to run it on modern day stuff, you're going to see the performance impact for it. Then we got web animations, which came out a few years later. Web animation took all the ideas of GreenSock, all these JavaScript animation libraries, and built it right into the browser. So all of this is just very simple animation code. We have a collection of spheres. We want to animate them. We're going to give them some keyframes. We're going to set some timing. We're going to use this fancy cubic Bezier curve. And then we're just going to animate everything and offset it so that by the time they play, we have this nice little animation kind of stagger effect. But what's cool is that we can pause this. We can hit play. We can catch things just as you see the squash and squish effect or the stretch and squish effect of this animation cycle. So this is all part of the platform. It's all great. What's the pain point with this is that as you try to coordinate all of these animations, you're going to be writing far more JavaScript to get interactions happen. You want to have an animation play, and then once that's finished, you want to trigger another animation. There's no great way to do that other than just waiting for that transition. So there is a better way for doing this these days, and that is view transitions. View transitions, if you have not heard of them, they are probably the coolest thing to come to the web. Now, a very, very technical definition of what view transitions are. The View Transitions API provides a mechanism for easily creating animated transitions between different DOM states while also updating the DOM contents in a single step. You update the DOM and it'll transition between the different states. Pretty easy. We can actually think of it as just getting the DOM changes and then the snapshot between the two. But for people who like to see visuals, let's say we have a list of items. We want to remove a list, one list item. We remove it from the DOM. The browser will detect that that has changed and actually transition between all of the different states. Pretty cool. But what does that actually mean? So it all starts off with this document.startViewTransition. Now, the startViewTransition is just a function. It accepts a callback. It could be a promise. But all it really does is say, hey, something's going to happen in here. Let's go ahead and track it. So we just have a simple layout over here. It's just a circle. And we're just going to randomly change the alignment property on this grid. So we do have start view transition, and now we have a transition. It's not a great transition because it's just a fade, but it's better than doing nothing. So we're tracking this, we're getting a little snapshot of that. What if we want to go and do something more? Well, we could actually use this view transition name property in CSS to actually tell the browser, hey, this thing is going to change its position. We should track it. So same exact demo, only thing that's been added, view transition name. The problem with random is that sometimes it'll give you the same exact value, so you can't tell. But by just clicking it, we're not coding any of the animation that is happening here. It is simply the browser knowing I was here, I'm here, figure it out, which is great. We can even go a step further by doing something that was a pain to do in web animations, and that was animate display none. This is a demo that's so good. It was from a buddy of mine, Adam Argyle, who works on the Chrome team. I didn't even want to rewrite it. It is literally a periodic table, so let's go ahead and zoom out real quick. Let's just filter out any element in here that is not a metal. Transitions. Let's get all the ones with the suffix. Now let's change their order. Nothing in this code actually controls the animation steps. It is just changing some order properties on the grid itself. We can even remove this like super fancy Adam showing off kind of animation timing, and we can see it a little bit more clear. We don't get any of the jumping. All of that is incredible because now I can just change the layout and I don't care about how that is going to affect or what the browser should do. Don't quit. Now, I said how this is working is that it's using snapshots. Basically, start view transitions, look at the DOM, and it will actually take a flattened DOM structure and create this pseudo tree called view transitions. Each element in here is an example of that box. So all the elements that were listed in there. Now, inside each of these groups, we get a pair. We get an old and a new. So now, if we want to animate something that was leaving, well, we assume there's only going to be an old, and there's not going to be a new thing that's in there. So we can code that CSS specifically using only child. We can also do that for new if the opposite's true, if we only want to animate things that are entering the DOM. Now, as cool as that periodic table example is, it's not really practical unless you are in the scientific and chemistry fields. You're a bunch of web developers. Yeah, it's not practical to you. Here is something that is practical. I'm like one of the few people that uses Apple Music, but there's like a dozen other people that also use Spotify. This is a layout that people see pretty often. It's a slide-out menu with a queue of songs, and it just moves the main content over to the side. It doesn't even need to be music related. You could have a slide-out menu. You could have a whole bunch of UI where this is how you reveal more information. How do you do that in web animations? So here it is. Our web animations approach is actually going through and using the flip animation approach, where you have bounding client rect, where you get into X, Y, width, and height. We're going to go through it. We're going to grab our layout change, apply a new layout here, grab that again. Now this is just going to be all the animation needed to animate the display none property. We basically have to take that element, put it in the DOM structure, and then move everything back to as if it wasn't there, setting the opacity of that element to 0. And we're doing a lot of position absolute. We're doing some cleanup. We're animating it, and then we have to clean up afterwards. And that's just for one element. Now we get to do the whole thing again for the other element. You can kind of see how if you have more involved layout and UI, you're coding all this together. So we are at 118 lines of code for a demo. No, thank you. Let's get rid of this. Let's just do the view transitions, and instead of having all of that hard-coded animation logic in here, let's move it to these two keyframes. We have a from and a to scale an element up, and then a fade in. We want something to show, we play it as normal. We want something to hide, we just play it in reverse. Browser's animation support in here for CSS is actually quite good. So when we go back to our demo, we can use the view transition and know that all of this is maintained by the browser. I don't really care where this element is going. I have nothing in my CSS for that blue element other than give it a name. This is only getting, hey, play this animation if I'm leaving. play this animation if I'm not leaving. It's great. It's so much better than what it used to be. Now, other than just showing pure vanilla examples, what about working with frameworks? Because most people are working with frameworks. I think was a safe assumption. Who uses Astro? Everyone, go check out Astro. It's pretty awesome. Astro is a really great example of a project that saw Vue transitions and were like, yes, please, we needed this yesterday. So much so that they have a built-in support for Vue transitions as part of their core offering. So all you have to do is actually give your main document this Vue transition element, and you get Vue transitions for free. So there's this really cool example that was shown a while ago where someone made this little playlist where you could click on all the elements, and using Astro's API, he built out all the different animations and has everything up here running. And this is great. Go to this person's GitHub URL if you want to mess around and just see how this works, because it is fascinating. I'm not in the Astro ecosystem. I'm in the Angular ecosystem. I know. Keep your comments to yourself. But Angular also has a great story in here as well. So I built this demo basically recreating that other one. And you can see the code for all this up on GitHub. But here's that same exact demo. And we have Vue transitions happening. It works. What's even great is like if we go up here and we just click that, when we go back, the scroll position gets maintained, which is super important because otherwise you're going to have like this jarring user experience and the whole animation was for nothing. Even peaceful guitar, that works out. Now, how this is working is behind the scenes, we're actually hooking into the Vue Transitions API. I said that callback just accepts any DOM changes. It also has a couple parameters in there that you can get access to. So we can get the current state of the animation, figure out where we are coming from and where we're going to. So that way, if for whatever reason, in this case, I want to dynamically assign a Vue transition name to an element, I can do that by just saying, hey, get me the current transition. Am I going to this element or not? And in my component, I can dynamically assign this Vue transition name. So this is great, pretty simple. I took it a step further. I took it a step further and made another one because I have nothing else to do. I made another Spotify example. I really love building music player apps for some reason. What's great about this one is that there is dynamically generated Vue transition names for everything on here. And took a little page out of Astro in the sense that all of this is actually computing a new transition name and inserting the styles for this in the DOM at runtime. So we're using computed style sheets. We're updating them every time a new element gets entered into the DOM. So that way, when we go to say this example, and in fact, if we go and open up the animation inspector and slow it down a little bit, you can see what is actually happening. And we can transition it. And what's even better is, let's just pause the animation. We can just pause this, inspect it. You can see over here, we got the Vue transition tree. Here's everything that we could possibly animate. Total overkill. Probably don't do this, but you could. So let's wrap up real quick. Vue transitions are awesome. This is literally the thing that has made me the most excited about the web. I could care less about JavaScript and signals. Vue transitions are the thing that everyone should be paying attention to. But it's not the only thing in the animation world. There's scroll-driven animations without having to reach for JavaScript. There's animation composition, so that way you can change how an animation or how multiple animations interact with one another. And there's transition behavior, which allow you to go from indeterminate states between like display none or display block. So a lot of animations out there. And it's never been easier to get started with it. So you can check out the slides up online, but thank you so much.